All right, we're rolling live from the survival pod out here in the wasteland. This is Freedom Phil, and what's the topic today? You see how the problems when it comes to the mental illness of a lot of Americans kind of go down the minute there's some authority? I think most of our problems, this is learned behavior that people have learned to tolerate. And I'll give you some examples. One of them has to do with the way women are treated versus men. It's not a gender thing. It's just take a look at some of the reactions you'll see from people. Yeah. Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it. And hey, turn up the video speed. Why do I always say that? Because if I upload this, you should watch it at least at 1.75. And this is not a channel for children. Let's be real about that. This is a channel for adults. I don't care if kids watch, but I am not your digital nanny. I'm not here to hold your hand. And if your kid regurgitates something I say and you're pissed off about that, stop being a shitty parent and know what they're watching. I regularly flog and flail a lot of my viewers because a lot of you are robots and retards. There's a handful of you that have thinking meat and know how to use it. I don't mind a good conversation, but if you're just some spurg, yeah, I'm going to farm you for content, jackass. Let's get into it. So I'm watching the news, and apparently there was a call from President Trump talking to Tim Walz. And they must have had a productive conversation. They must have had some information. Something must have come out, these private chats that have been going on all over the country, organizing basically, let's be honest, friggin' terrorism. I imagine it has something to do with that on top of the fraud that's going on. Because understand, this entire protest of ICE isn't just because of the Democratic votes. It's a cover. It's a cover. It's a great cover for what's probably about to happen in Iran. Can't say for sure, but it seems like, no one's paying attention about the naval ships going over to the Mediterranean. Ain't no one saying much about that other than Trump. So what I'm getting at with this is that it's been a good cover for all the fraud. As other states are showing this, it becomes more and more evident that, yes, Tampon Tim probably knew about this. And yeah, Tim did decide to fall on a sword. But did he really fall on a sword? Because he's still in office. I imagine there was a conversation about some information about that. And they said, hey, look, you're either going to do this or I'm going to come in there and they're going to crack some heads. And Tampon Tim was a bit more reasonable. So you see that the police now come in there and they're arresting people when they do jackass shit. And people are doing less jackass shit. Now, I notice of these unhinged, insane people, how many of them are women? Particularly middle-class, suburban scumbag white women. You see this kind of mentality. And I saw this short, and it really kind of just defines the difference between men and women in general. And I think we could solve a lot of our problems. Like, if women were held accountable for their jackass behavior the way men are, I think how many of our problems in society would disappear tomorrow? Well, what do you mean, held accountable? I mean exactly what I'm saying. This black woman slides off on the ice, wrecks her car, is too fast for conditions. I got one of those tickets once. I was going up Mount Walker after Christmas, on Highway 101. They didn't de-ice the road well enough, and I hit a patch of black ice, and I slid into the ditch. And they wrote me too fast for conditions ticket. I thought they were assholes for it. And this is God, way back. It's probably coming on not quite 25 years ago, but around that era. Let's say easily over 20 years. And did I make a scene? I mean, fuck, that officer didn't even offer me a ride to somewhere better or anything. I got a tow truck to just yank my car out of the ditch. I changed my tire. And, got my car running. But did I act like a fool with that officer? No, I did not. I watched this video, this short of this black woman just losing her friggin' mind. You're not going to be that chicken. You're not doing it. And she's every epithet, every swear word under the sun. By the way, if you want to talk in this chat, you got to be a subscriber. I don't want to hear from the people. I don't want to hear from the people that actually got something intelligent to say. Although some of you have subscribed just to be jackasses, in which case I'll enjoy putting you in timeout. Or I'll just block you if I'm just bored. It's funny how close those two buttons are. This woman is just going off. She's just going off on, like, and I'm just thinking, make asylums great again. MAGA, make asylums great again. Because you got, like, I'm an outlander. I'm a wastelander. And I was riding my bike the other day, and I was on the wrong side of the road purposely. And why was I doing that? Because I want to see my problems come right at me. And the local sheriff pulls me over. And I'm like, he's like, I didn't even see you when I was coming over that hill. And I thought to myself, I'm like, what were you looking at? Like right in front of you. How can you not see this? I'm more worried about some jackass on their cell phone on a skinny little county highway, county road. Like they basically got no shoulder. I'm going down, do a little laundry in the river and get some water. It's a bit of a ride down. They're kind of rolling hills downhill. And then you got to work your way back up to where I'm at. So I'm trying to play it safe and see my problems coming. But he didn't write me a ticket. He didn't give me any troubles. You know what I didn't do? I didn't act like a fool. Now, how much of the problems that we're seeing in these so-called protests, these activists, are women that have never been punished and Democrat men that might as well be women? Like, you got all this time all day and on, it's like the Peggy Bundy example, except for Peggy Bundy would just be watching TV. She wouldn't be out in the streets. These people that get up in the morning and they watch The View, or they watch, their shows. And now the angry Karens of America that never had anything better to do with their lives are out there and screaming. These people have never got their asses whooped, not once. Maybe they threw down with some bitch here and there, there's a cat fight. But they have never had society slap them around the way a man gets. A man gets mistreated on the regular. And the man just has to be like, well, that's the way it is. It's the way the world is to a man. But a woman gets a pass. And look, here's why. You got a pussy. It takes what? Let's just go with genetics. The way society is. It takes how many minutes to recharge a super soaker sperm cannon? It takes 9 months to produce a baby. Sorry if that's a bit graphic for a lot of you motherfuckers, but that's the truth. So it makes women innately more valuable. So that's part of the reason, like they say men are 10 times as sexual, we are. Not that women aren't sexual, it's that we are 10 times more sexual than women. And therefore, we're the ones that have to jump higher, do this and that, and we're the ones that are held to the standards. We're the ones that are expected to go out and rebuild society. And we build most of society for women. And women have gotten way too used to this concept that you can do no wrong. So they get stuck in this perpetual childlike mentality. Now tell me that is not like a poor version of a rich kid. And you see this with a lot of these Democrats that are subsidized. Now imagine for a second that if you go out there and you're causing a bunch of fucking problems on the streets, you could get kicked off your benefits. And maybe they would charge you with a tax bill for the nuisance problems you've been causing. Like, I believe in the idea of protesting and freedom of speech, but that's holding a sign and being reasonable. Bashing pots and pans at 2:00 in the morning, let me tell you something fucked up. It's like the privilege of a Harley rider. What do you mean a Harley rider? Harley rider goes up. I had a buddy who lived in this kind of like, they had a creek and there was a valley and there were some houses up there. And this guy lived up Upper Valley. He would go up there 2 a.m, coming back from the bar, blah, 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 wake everybody the fuck up, Why is it that Harley rider gets to have that loud ass thing? But after 10 o'clock or even 9 o'clock, I can't remember when it was, 8 or 9 o'clock, there was noise ordinances. There was a reasonable noise ordinance after a certain hour. Bashing pots and pans is not the same. Like if you're downtown and there's a bar, there's an expectation that most of that sound in that bar will stay in that bar. So people who are renting a motel, a hotel, motel, whatever you want to call it, can get a night of sleep because that is a temporary form of residence. We have expectations in society. But then you get these people that go out there and they get the vanguard of bored suburban Karens, whether it's the white Karen, the black Karen known as the Blairin, and they go out there and they're making a nuisance of themselves. And you know why? These women have never been realistically punished. They have never seen punishment in the way that a man sees it. Therefore, for them, this is what I do. This is popular. You know why a lot of social movements, whether it's conservatives or Democrats or just whatever group, use women? Because they're great shields. They're a bunch of people that once they get into that fervor of, we're on the right side of history, they think in the back of their mind, there will never be a justified public ass whooping. And I think, this is the way I look at it. Okay, it's one thing if you just got busted the first time for being a jackass in these protests. But I don't want to see someone gets one night in jail and then gets, how many hours of community service. Okay, that I can understand that to a degree. But if you are a repeat jackass offender, I think you should be publicly caned. Caned? By the way, I think of the same thing if you get busted one too many times, like you get busted driving on your cell phone. Like, okay, maybe the first time will be a little lenient, but you still get a big ass ticket. I can't name the number of times when I was driving truck across this country, I would look down. And you know what I would see? I'd see some woman, some man doing the head bob up and down from the steering wheel, looking at the phone. Let me give you a pro tip. Put the phone on the dash and put something to cover up your phone so it doesn't get sunburnt. That way you don't have to constantly look up and down. Or how about, here's an even wilder tip. Just turn on some tunes. Turn on an MP3. Turn it to do not disturb because you're fucking driving. But I would take some of these people that are repeat offenders because I think they're worse than drunk drivers, to be honest. Because someone who's a drunk driver might take a little caution in what they're doing. I'm not excusing drunk drivers, but people on their phones, at a certain point, you take them motherfuckers out and you cane them. Just like with these protesters, you saying you're going to have women getting caned? Yes. And the moment you start having standards for public behavior, again, all this shit stops. Just like that black woman who slid on the ice and she was losing all her mind. You ain't give me that ticket. You ain't, and all the epithets, all the swearing and all this. At some point, maybe we should start having a situation where you make sure you get it on recording as much as possible. When they're losing their fucking mind, ma'am, are you off your medication? And then call in a box, a paddy wagon. We need to put this one in the rubber room for evaluation. You watch how quickly all this shit stops. You have people who do jackass shit one too many. I don't want them just to get some fine or, community service. And sometimes I think jail time, some of them, you give them 6 months of jail time or however long. They really fuck up, they're going to get years. I think it should come with, and by the way, before we get to massive amounts of jail time, because I don't want to spend my money putting someone in jail because they ain't going to learn shit. Oh, it'll fuck up their lives. They ain't going to learn shit from that. You start caning people and you watch how quickly the jackass behavior ends, because most people cannot conceptualize 20, 30 years in prison, but everybody understands an ass whooping. That's just how it is. And women, I swear to God, the vanguard, the human shit. And by the way, you know what's really fucked up? These women who take their children to the protest. There is something mentally ill with you. And by the way, whoever put that like, thank you for the like. And by the way, you got anybody who wants to talk, you just got to be a subscriber. That's how it rolls. But stay on topic. You're like, why do I got to be a subscriber? Why do I got to listen to a bunch of motherfuckers that ain't doing shit for me? Huh? You don't do that in your day-to-day reality. You expect something from the people in society. If subscribing's a bridge too far for people, fair enough. That's the bridge you won't cross. But I shouldn't have to listen to you. That's how I view it. So, I'm telling you, you start putting some of these people in asylums because they are acting crazy. And you start having a code of conduct for society. Because I as a regular straight white man, just regular dude, I could tell you right now, if I acted up the way a lot of these women act up, I would have been tased, if not shot. That's the truth of it. As a man, ask the brothers out there, ask the black men. If you acted a fool the same way that a lot of these women act a fool, whether it's white, black, what the fuck ever, what type of woman, your ass would have been tased or shot. I think, and that's part of the problem. They count on this human shield of women, particularly bored white women. And I'm saying, you start putting these people in boxes. You start, like, okay, you need to be sent. I had a buddy who took some acid back in the day. By the way, crown jewel of faking crazy. He really thought he was God. It was hilarious. And he did fake crazy and get a check. But when he was out there thinking he was God, they put him in a mental situation. And he used that to his advantage. And they're like, but you can't be God. And he's like, can you prove I'm not? And like, well, you're clearly insane. And he's probably still living on a government check to this very day. Retired at 18. He had a free apartment and everything. Only thing that could fuck that up is probably pussy or ambition. I used to tell him, dude, you're a genius with computers. He would go to the Goodwill, and this is back in the, early to mid 2000s. He'd go to the Goodwill, get like 3 or 4 computers and put them together and make a decent running computer. He was that type of guy. That guy was wasted talent. But like, if one of my friends or some of the people I know would be put in a fucking psych ward for acting a fool, why the hell is it some of these mentally unstable women on the streets? Well, no, she's just having a moment. And by the way, ladies, if you think what I'm saying is crazy, then you're just admitting that women and men aren't equal. Men are held to higher standards. Why are we held to higher standards if we're all equal? And the answer for that's actually incredibly simple. Men basically build everything. And young, attractive, beautiful women are the fuel that inspires men to go out and fucking storm the beaches, build the factories, build the bridges. We don't build all this shit because we thought, man, I just want to slave away for most of my healthy adult life. I just want to throw my life away at some damn job. That's part of the reason I recommend. If you're capable of doing it, retirement by 30. I've said it many a time. I'll say it again. Go get a job like trucking or the trades, live as cheap as possible. I don't care whether it's like share room, living with your parents, living in a tent, living in an RV, doing van life. Hell, if you're in the military, there's free room and board there. If you're a trucker, the truck is actually your home, so you don't have to pay all those bills. You take your excess money that you're making and you invest it when you're young. And then you live off the dividends. I mean, shit, at this point, I'm living off the fucking dividends. You know what I should do? I should turn this channel to where I got a PayPal option and see if I can make enough every month to be like, yeah, I made enough to live. And I only live off, like, out here in the wasteland, I only live off of like $200 to $300. But my point is, if you get rid of all this mentally ill behavior being tolerated among the women, then you would see a whole lot less of this. And so we actually got real comments here. So let's see what the people are saying. The states could be efficient. They just missed child support. Yep, that's right. There's another one right there. Why is it when women skip on their child support, we're like, oh, she's just a poor woman. Why doesn't she have the child? Because she was a drug addict or she was an irresponsible bitch. She ran off with some guy and left the kids. They'll still make excuses for women in that case. But if a guy fucks up, he'll put them in jail, take away his licenses, and ruin his fucking life. I'm just saying, we don't support men whatsoever in society. We put extra weight and punishment upon men. And it's almost like having kids is literally a detriment to a man. If you're a responsible man and you have your act together and you get married or have kids, you're lucky if you're Al Bundy. Let's say you're successful, but you're still lucky if you're Al Bundy and you still got a wife that likes to spend your money but still likes having sex. You are a lucky man, consider these days. These days, you see a lot of guys get just treated like glorified slaves. And you get to see your kids in fast forward. Well, you get to see your kids every other weekend. Isn't that great? Wow. So my kids are around the new guy, whatever random guy my ex is banging. So, safest place for children to be is with the father, the biological father. Now, there are some exceptions, but for statistically, who's going to give the shit most about his kids? Not some random motherfucker. Read the next comment. Single working dad denied any assistance, paid $800 a month support. Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you, man. I'm all about that 50-50 custody. I think there's no excuse why women shouldn't just have to go get a job just like everybody else. The fair sex and all that. I don't give a fuck anymore. I had to hear about equal rights my whole childhood. And, men are bad, men are this, like I had a relative of mine sit there be telling me about how white men are the problem with the world. The white men control all the governments. I'm like, man, that's just a handful of rich dudes. If you go to Africa, it's a bunch of rich black dudes controlling the government. And why do dudes do all this? To get pussy. Deep down, it's money and power. Money, power, and pussy. It's like, what was that line? Was it Scarface or some shit like that? I can't remember. First you get the coke, then you get the power, then you get the money, then you get the bitches. Something like that. I can't remember. It's been years since I've seen that clip. But I'm just saying, man, we do all the shit we do for women. And then women run around talking about equal rights, but they're not held to an equal standard. And I think most of this craziness in the streets would end really quickly. Like, there's two things. Another group, let's just have a quick conversation about that. Another group that gets the woman's treatment to some degree? Illegal immigrants. You got people working jobs, probably using someone else's social security or someone else's driver's license or some bullshit. There's truckers out there. Illegal. I'm not talking about H-1Bs. And by the way, I'm against that shit. I don't think trucking is a job that a lot of young Americans could do tomorrow. We don't need Punjab to come over here and do this work. We don't. I'm a little fucking sick and tired of us taking in every other person from every other broke ass country. If I'm going to take someone in from another country, at least have it be some scientist that can build something great for us. But you see this situation where you got immigrants come to our country, break the laws, go to the emergency room, can't speak English, never going to pay the bill, which means, the hospitals write that off. No, there is no such thing as a write-off. They have to pay the money for the care that was done. They might write it off on their taxes, but guess what? That means they're going to take that money. They're going to increase the rates for you, the person with insurance. You, the person with cash. You, the legal citizen, is going to pay more. Habla Espanol just walks out the door and never pays the fucking bill. You pay the bill, just like with welfare. There's no free lunch. When someone's living on Section 8 and they're getting their apartment paid for, their food paid for, everything paid for, whether they're legal or not, someone else has to pay that bill. That is money taken out of your paycheck to pay for problems you did not make. You are effectively being punished by the system for being responsible. These illegals that are taking up space, time, and money in our country. I look at it and I'm like, that talk about some freedom. Well, they contribute. Some of them do. But let's be real about it. If you're illegal, are you paying Social Security taxes? Probably not. You're illegal unless you got some fake ID, which means you're committing some form of fraud right there. And if you're committing this form of fraud, what's the next level of fraud you might commit? Because if you think to yourself, well, if I get caught, I just leave the country. I'll just go back to my home country where they won't give a shit. You knock up some bitch in this country, oh, he's so cool and he sounds so ethnic. And then it's like, oh, you're pregnant? Adios. I'm sorry, But then who has to pay the cost for that bastard child? Everyone else in the community who actually goes to work and pays real taxes. Like, that's the thing about it. We treat people from other countries better than we treat Americans because the American is viewed as a captured form of economic GDP livestock. You're not viewed as a human being with rights. You're viewed as a product. You're viewed as cattle. You're fed bad food. You're treated with disrespect. You're treated with high interest rates, taxes. And then who are they fighting to keep around? A bunch of motherfuckers that broke into your country. Who are they making excuses for? A bunch of Somalians. They're scamming for millions, more like multiple billions of dollars out of, you can't afford daycare because that the price is so high in some of these cities. But they basically have empty rooms, empty daycares being paid for by your American government. You look at that for a second and you think to yourself, there are actually people out on the streets fighting to protect that. Most of them are irrational, illogical women and men that think like bitches. People that have never been held accountable in their whole fucking lives. Now, like I said earlier, just as a closing thought, you start doling out some ass whoopings. You start taking some of these people acting a fool on the streets, and you're like, well, you clearly have we have someone with a mental issue. I think they're off their pills. And you send them into a fucking asylum for a time, and you let it be written in their permanent record. Yeah, this person was put into a nut ward. You let people actually know. You start cutting people's benefits, for instance. You start putting a tax on being a fucking jackass. Because like I said, I don't want to pay $40,000 to $50,000 to $60,000 per year to incarcerate a motherfucker. Incarcerate some of them so it's a scare tactic. That'll take most of these suburban, lily, rich, bored white women. And they'll be like, oh shit, there's consequences? Fuck that. Consequences. But you start kicking all the people that are on benefits off benefits, and you watch how quickly this shit just ends. You start publicly caning people. Because before I don't want to put, all you do by putting someone in prison for like 20 years. And yeah, that sounds good on the surface. But all you do when you put someone in jail for 20 years is waste, let's say $50,000 times 20. How much money is that? No, you got to make prison unpleasant. You got to make the mental institution something you fear. You know why people came back from Vietnam with real ass problems in their head from seeing like one of their buddies blown up, like half his body, and he's like, you watch his eyes, the life leave his fucking eyes. It's the lower half of his body doesn't exist anymore. He has to come back and wake up fucking in a cold sweat because of the nightmares that he has. And he has to keep that bottled up because if you were a nut job back in the day, they put you in a rubber room. You lose your clearance. You lose your ability to work a job. There was no, he's just got an issue. Just give him a check. There was no give a check. So people kept their shit together. Hell, drug addicts kept their shit together back in the day. And one could argue as rent was cheaper back in the day, it was easier to make it. But you start putting people back in asylums for acting crazy on the streets. And most of it's a lot of women. And the simp men that are trying to get some activist pussy. Weak, has to take like testosterone level, my peen doesn't get hard anymore. Maybe they shove something up their ass to get them a little fucking tickled. These Democrat men. You take a few of these people, and especially the beautiful ones. What do I mean by that? The rich, the untouchables, not in the India way, but I'm saying those that cannot be blemished by their own actions. You take the privileged princes and princesses of these protest movements, and you fucking go Old Testament on their ass, and you watch how quickly all this shit stops. But that's the thing. Women have never been held accountable for their jackass behavior in the modern era. Back in the day, there was some sort of, if you were a fool, acting a fool as a woman, there was some social shame for it. And that kept a lot of women in check. It wasn't just, the men, the evil men. Oh, it was other women being like, I don't want to be associated with that bitch. She's trashy. There are no standards anymore. And that's a lot of the reason you see this jackass behavior. It's bored women, just like the feminist movement. Go back to the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was bored with housewives, had nothing to do, that were like, and then another woman whispers in their ear, don't you want more than this? Yeah. And you get a movement of bored women that if they had jobs or real problems, they wouldn't have time for that shit. I'm just saying. Maybe we need to bring back, like the Boondocks. I ain't trying to be cold or mean. I ain't trying to be mean. But a good old-fashioned pimp smack. Like, bitch, you're acting crazy. And watch how quickly a lot of women are like, oh, shit. Hell, there's a lot of them that actually get turned on by that shit. They won't admit it. But from the right guy, a man telling them, woman, quit acting crazy. They'll obey. There's some women that'll get all like, I'd never, you get one of those boss bitches and it's like, and then you got to have society give the pimp slap. But I bet most of these problems in the streets, if you got the protected, privileged class of women off of the fucking streets, you got these women understanding there's consequences for your jackass behavior. It all stopped tomorrow because behind a bunch of crazy women acting a fool is some simp Democrat man just trying to get some activist pussy. And people follow motivations, incentives. The lack of punishment is an incentive. And by the way, if women just started saying, we expect a man to be, like if guys said no hymen, no diamond, and women said, well, if you want this, you got to have, paid off house and a decent job. You watch how quickly that become the gold standard for guys. Guys would find whatever cheat code in life to be able to save money. Like I said, retirement by 30, live as cheap as possible. Go out, work a job, invest when you're young. Cheap houses all over the Midwest. If women actually went back to a sane level of productive shame and standards, like we had just less than 100 years ago, I think you could turn this ship around really quick. But let's be real. Everything we're seeing is a hangover from all the prosperity we've had for too long. The boomers had it too good. Gen X had it slightly less than the boomers, but still really good. The millennials were just led like cattle into the slaughterhouse of the universities and ideological thinking. Basically, kids that were raised on the TV, much like a lot of Gen X. And the Zoomers are now looking at the situation and they're like, I'm not doing that. More Zoomers are walking away. They're not going to be the generation that changes things, but more of them are conscious. We're coming to this part of the cycle where the golden age of prosperity that the boomers pissed away, vacation's all I ever wanted, is coming to an end. And now people are having to be a bit more rational. But until we hit rock bottom in some form, to where people actually cry out for someone to say, hey, can we just have law and order again? And I think you're kind of seeing that with Trump. You're seeing some of these cities quietly saying, and some of these are blue cities saying, can you fix this problem, Mr. President? Can you come in here and clean up the gangs, the problems? Because they don't want to go against their constituency. But you know what? You look like Washington, D.C., murder capital, crime-ridden shithole of the world. All it took was like a week or two, and they had it cleaned up. When people start having standards put upon them, and it really, a lot of it comes back down to the women. When women aren't held equally accountable as a man would be held, you're going to keep on seeing this. Just like women who start bar fights. They start bar fights and expect a couple of men to beat the shit out of each other over this crap. Just saying. This Freedom Phil, like, subscribe, and hey, whoever put the 4 likes, appreciate it. Any subscribers, I appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.